Good morning, Year 5. In today's lesson, we're going to be detectives of knowledge and gather information. Now, detectives don't just go off of the first story they hear. They gather evidence, ask questions, and look for clues, which is exactly what we're going to be doing in today's HSIE lesson. In HSIE, we learn through subjects like history and geography, which both belong to this large family called humanities and social sciences, but simply as HASS. But here's the exciting part. Each discipline or way of thinking helps us see the world in different ways. Now, here is our big detective question today. How do different disciplines in HASS help us see the world in different ways? I want you to imagine we're standing in front of the glass house in Port Macquarie. Two detectives show up. One is a historian, the other one a geographer. The historian dusts off old archives and the geographer pulls out maps and data. Both stare at the exact same building, but they see different things. Let's see what they notice. Now, our historian steps forward first. Remember, this is our detective who's focusing on the history of the glass house. She asks, what stories does this place tell about people in the past? She's interested in time, things like how has this place changed and what does it represent? She might look for things like old photographs of Port Macquarie's town centre to show what used to stand here before, and she might discover along the way that this land was once part of the traditional country of the Biripi people whose connection to this place stretches back thousands of years. She now wants to know, how has the use of this space changed over time? What does the glasshouse tell about Port Macquarie's past? And what stories are we missing? So, we can now write down key notes about our historians. Historians measure time. They gather resources, things like photos, artifacts, and records, and they analyse cause and effect and change in continuity. And then they also look at the perspectives from different people and groups. Next, our geographer steps forward. He's looking at the same place, but through a completely different lens. He's not thinking about time as much as our historian was. He's thinking more about space. He's asking questions like, where is the glasshouse located and why here? And how does its location affect the way people move, work, and connect? And lastly, what impact does this have on the environment around it? This might be things like rivers, traffic, and our very own Port Macquarie community. Our geographer uses maps, data, and fieldwork to look for his answers. Maybe he looks at aerial images, which are photos taken from way, way, way above to show the area of the glasshouse and the places around it. He might even collect data about how people access the building by walking, driving, or public transport. He is investigating these things to explore the connections between people, places, and the environment, and consider how human actions have shaped Port Macquarie and how we can plan a more sustainable future. So, our overall notes are that geographers focus on space, people, places, and its environment, and they gather data, and then they also explore the interconnections between people and places. So, now that we know a little bit more about our detectives, we can see where they overlap in our investigation. I have drawn a Venn diagram behind me so that we can visually connect the similarities and differences between our historian and geographers. So both the historian and the geographer are curious about people and place. They both gather evidence to understand the world. The difference is that their questions lead them in different directions. One through time, which is our historian, and one across space, which is our geographer. When we combine these ways of thinking, we get a more complete understanding of our disciplines, history and geography. Our dive into history helps us appreciate the past of the glasshouse, and the geography helps us to understand its impact and location. Together, they help us answer deeper questions. Alright, detectives, you're doing amazing so far. We've been able to learn how historians and geographers think, but we need to check how our curriculum encourages students to think like them. So how you guys are thinking like our historians and geographers. So, here it is, our Human, Society and Environment HSIE subject syllabus. It's the map teachers like me follow to help you build your knowledge. So, on this side we have geography, and on this side we have history. Let's see what the syllabus says you guys should be learning, and I'll get you to help me decide if it aligns with today's lesson. So, for geography, firstly we have people are connected to places, which we have covered today, so that one gets a tick. Next, people are connected to places and groups, which aligns with our first dot point, so yes, we have covered that. Tick. And then geographical information helps us understand the world, which we know, so that one also gets a tick. And lastly, for geography, geographical information helps us plan for sustainable futures, which we cover towards the end, so that one also gets a tick. Now, moving on to history. First, we have people have lived in the past, which we all know, so that one, tick. And then, people have learned about the past through stories, images, objects, and sites, which we also covered, so yeah. And then history uses sources to build narratives. We have done that, so tick. And lastly, historical sources show different perspectives, which we covered towards the end as well. So, alright detectives, do we now see how this framework actually reflects our investigation into the tools our historian and geographer used earlier at the Glass House? Geographers focus on place, connection, and sustainability. They're trying to help understand how people interact with their environment now and in the future. Historians, however, focus on time, sources, and perspectives. They're uncovering how people lived and how we remember their stories. But detectives, we're not done yet. We still need to think critically about our syllabus. We can ask whose perspectives are being included and whose are still missing. On the history side of things, we see some inclusion of First Nations perspectives. Students learn that people lived in the country for thousands of years. This means we need to ask questions like, are those stories told from Indigenous voices or mainly from European perspectives? And do students explore Indigenous ways of recording history, like through oral storytelling, or do we still rely mostly on written records? In geography, the syllabus talks about using information to plan for sustainable futures. That gives us a really good opportunity to include perspectives from all around the world. For example, how different communities might adapt to climate challenges. However, these examples don't really get us to use our collaborative voices because we'll be learning about these communities but not directly from them. A truly inclusive curriculum would teach us to value global knowledge systems and Indigenous knowledge, helping us understand how to care for our land and our world. So detectives, let's get back to discovering what we've actually learned from our curriculum. The syllabus does build disciplinary thinking about historians and geographers and how they have clear ways of exploring the world, but our investigation shows that there's still room for growth. Our curriculum should be centered around Indigenous and global perspectives so that we can learn many different ways of thinking. And when we apply these ways of thinking, we create a learning space that is more inclusive and powerful for everyone. So, detectives of knowledge, I'm excited to announce that you've cracked the case. We've seen how historians and geographers think and how HSIE's syllabus guides that learning. But remember, every time we ask whose story is told, whose place is mapped, or whose voice is missing, we are thinking like true scholars and shaping a more inclusive future. And that's it. Lesson solved.